Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Morning, Glenn.
What's up, my brother? How you doing? You ready?
Yeah, that was fun. That was funny. That was funny right there.
Are you ready?
It's like the two guys that were playing chess, right? And they're
wait for the other guy.
Wait for the other guy, and there's like an hour and a half. And it's like, wait a minute, it's your move, right? Yeah, we're just sitting back, sitting in new digs at Audio Hive here.
New studio. Man.
Yeah, very nice. You can't
spacious, stylish.
You can't see it on podcast,
Brian.
Bill, but trust me, it's impressive.
Oh, it's like double, triple the size.
Yeah.
Podcast
is the way to go.
Green room.
Podcasts are the way to go.
Strawberries in the morning.
I'm telling you, yeah.
Totally, man. So I love jumping in the coffee shop with you, brother. Always love it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. How
you been?
Good to be here. Good, man. Really, overall, can't complain.
Podcasting at dawn on a Saturday. Who would have imagined?
No, I would imagine
We
a lot of things.
could have picked noon, but no.
No, could have picked noon.
You give it 4:30 on a Saturday. Love it. But I'll do anything for sobriety, and so will you.
That's right. Hey, shout out to the website. If people looking for resources.
Is the website doing good?
Yeah, our website's doing good. Got a good resource room in there. So anytime we have a guest, we try and put a link to their social media or their book or whatever they have on.
Love the writings, man.
Yeah. No guests this morning though. Just straight up you and I. No ice.
I actually love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love our guests. We all know we love guests, but man, it's just cool to sit back and chat through sobriety. And I'm curious about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, that makes two of us. I was given a lead the other night at a meeting, and on the 12th step, as a matter of fact, and we'll probably end up talking about that some today. But I said, you're probably going to be surprised by something I say tonight because I'm probably going to be surprised by something I say tonight.
No, totally, man.
Well,
it's funny when we started this out.
Oh, we'd have papers in front of us,
and
catalogs. The Britannica Encyclopedia Britannica's out. We'd have everything. Now we come with a cup of coffee and a muffin.
I know. So you had threw out an idea potentially coming up that we might go live at some big sober fest.
Yeah. Keep your ears out for that.
Man.
Yeah,
that'd be cool just to kind of lay it down live.
Yeah. Brian, our Audio Hive engineer,
Brian's
said we can go mobile. So
Brian's going mobile.
We might be coming to a town near you.
I know, that's awesome, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's a big deal. It's like up in McHenry County, Illinois, but
so
it attracts
Chicagoland, right?
Yeah, it attracts people from all over the United States. Thousands
really?
of people go to it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. There's so much fun stuff to do. As long as I had alcohol, I was at a fun event, right? I mean, for the most part
Even
of my
by yourself.
life. Even by myself. And I really thought that this sober living style was going to really put a crimp in my social life. And
a lot of people do. In fact, I'm
it's
working
a big fear.
I'm working on this other sober project, and that's one of the things that's really coming out is people who are sober curious view sobriety as really boring.
Yeah, sure. Right. What am I going to do?
I'm like, what in the world?
I know.
That's wrong.
Yeah, and it's anything but.
I know.
So and that's part of what what we talked about the other night at this meeting was, living. So the 12th step, right, is pretty simple, and there's 12 steps in recovery.
I think you should probably read it.
I can read it
officially.
Officially it says,
here you go.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So, but let's back up a notch. You think, this is what I thought anyway. I thought, okay, there's 12 steps to this recovery program. I'm on step 11. I'm getting close. I'm on step 12. I'm about to graduate. I'm done with this program. But, the thing is...
Did you really think that?
I really did. I thought that in the early stages, I thought it was 12 steps. You do that, and then you hit the road. You either go out there, you learn how to drink better, or you don't drink at all again and you're miserable.
You and I are
those
so
are my two
alike.
options.
I can remember my first rehab in 2003. I got a temporary sponsor because he drove a cool car, dressed nice, had a great watch, great shoes, right?
all the qualifiers.
That was totally my qualifications. So I'm driving up Pacific Coast Highway, right? And I'm like 2 weeks into this. So I got him about a week in. So I'm 2 weeks in, and he takes me out on a field trip, right? Which means we go to a meeting outside. And I can remember tapping my watch, driving up the Pacific Coast Highway. I'm like, come on, dude, we got to get through these 12 steps. I said, I have to get back to work. And he just looked at me and just shook his head. He goes, you will never finish the steps.
And wasn't that a scary thing for you to hear?
Well, I didn't understand it. I'm like, of course I will.
Yeah, right.
Like,
you finish. I'm a finisher.
I'm an achiever, man. Let's
That's
go.
Right. Let's get this thing going.
So it's funny how we, in many ways, are so much alike, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So you obviously, you said when we were getting ready to kick off, you said there's like three parts to.
Yeah, there is.
to the step.
There's having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps.
What does that look like?
Well, that's the thing. I've learned it can be one of two things, right? It can be a lightning bolt, and that happens to people. And what I mean by that is all of a sudden you are overwhelmed that there's this God presence in your life, and you are now an altered individual, and it happens almost instantly.
So you really believe that happens?
I believe that happens to people. And here's where, if we believe the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the stories at the beginning of the book had those experiences, a sudden change and a transformation that happened suddenly. In the back of the book, I forgot what page, it's like almost at the very end of the book, Alcoholics, it's an appendix. And it says, hold on, don't be discerned or concerned if you didn't have a lightning bolt experience in your life. There is another spiritual awakening that is more educational. It happens over time. It just, well, I mean, let's admit it.
Slowly.
Yes. And Glenn, you love to say that. You're on the slow train.
Right.
And it happens to people over time. Mine was a bit of a morph. Mine was, I mean, I had changed. The obsession compulsion to drink had left me right away. So I was a changed individual from that aspect. But it wasn't a real spiritual awakening that I had at that point. I didn't get it until I had worked the steps. So again, I'll shut up, but what's the first part of it?
Having had a spiritual awakening
as a result
right.
of working these steps, right?
Which takes time.
Right. It takes time. So
no, I always refer, and I've said this before, and I don't, I mean, hey, if somebody has achieved a lightning bolt, God bless them, right? I mean, for me, it's so far from my experience. When I knew a guy who kneeled down to his bed in rehab, and he got the lightning bolt, and God spoke to him, and boom,
yeah,
right?
Right.
And I skeptic in me says I don't believe it, right? But as I'm sitting here listening to you describe it, right, there was a point in my surrender, September of 2014, where I call it a lightning bolt, or well, there's two specific points. One is, I just knew when I surrendered, I looked at my dude and I'm like, look, I will do anything you tell me to do. I just cannot take another drink, right? I knew at that point something happened, and I knew spiritual north was what I had to achieve. I just knew I had to get back to a higher power, spiritual, God, whatever. I had no idea what that was at the time because God didn't work for me. But then I went to... I think I told you about the time I went to the church service, like the first week. I mean, I was so mentally and physically and emotionally hurt, right? And I couldn't even, the next 10 minutes was just overwhelming for me, just how I looked at life. And then I went to this church service because I was committed, hey, True North, I'm going to start going back to church. I went to this church, and for an hour I felt like $1 million. So maybe that was and then I went back out in the parking lot. I felt all the pain come back. So maybe that was somewhat of a little awakening.
Right.
That hey, and the way I look at that, looking back at it, is it was my higher power. It was God telling me, Glenn, you're exactly where you need to be, and I will make you feel good. It will be okay. Right. And I felt like crap the entire next week until I went back to church that following Sunday.
Right.
And then it was like bliss again. And that was really, maybe that was, I don't know, man.
Well, see,
I'm still trying to find the word happy.
Right. I think that because of the spiritual awakening thing, I think it scares a lot of people off. Like, it if they're looking past step one, which is where they might be today, trying to figure out if they're even an alcoholic, the fact that they gotta have some spiritual awakening, you don't force a spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening, the way I'm reading it, and look, I'm not a 12-step expert, so if you're looking for expert testimony on the 12-step, you're on the wrong podcast.
Well, we should probably end the episode then.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but the thing is that, like, for me, I was on a gurney in an emergency room, and this angel of a nurse said to me, do you want to stop drinking? And I said, yes, I do. And for the first time having this conversation with a total stranger, I knew that I was on my course to getting better. And so to put an exclamation mark on the spiritual awakening, I think I figured out later on in the steps that I had my transformation started early in my process. So, that's the thing that I just don't think people should get caught up on it, because you're going to have one as a result of working these steps. If you don't work the steps, and if you haven't had a spiritual awakening by the time you get to 12 steps, again, I'm no genius, but I would go back and try and figure out where I missed off on the spiritual awakening, and trying to find it for myself based on the writings of the book. And right? Does that make any kind of sense?
Yeah, I think as I look back, my surrender was the beginning of the miracle.
Right, yeah, right.
My spiritual awakening was additional fuel.
Right.
And
surrender to win.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. What's funny is there's times I go back, especially when people need kind of direction on a certain topic. Mm-hmm. I'll go back to an episode, right, that we've done. And I sit there and I listen to something, and you have, it's funny, like when we're here live doing the process,
we're not paying attention.
Yeah, well, half the time I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to bounce off of you, right, trying to make it smooth, but you say some really impactful and sometimes funny shit. So I think you're the This is Brian. I think you're the funny one. Do you remember we got that review?
Somebody goes, and you guys are funny. And like we spent the next couple of months trying to figure out which one they were talking about.
No, she said one of you guys are funny. We never knew which one. We never knew which one it was. All right. So we had a spiritual awakening. So for me, and I just want to put this out there, man. And I'm going to paint a picture that's probably unrealistic for a lot of people, and I get it. Just come back and keep sucking it up and just keep coming back.
Right.
But sobriety is an absolute superpower.
Right.
And spirituality, the God thing, the higher power thing, is another superpower.
Right. And by the way,
I have so many examples. Nobody can prove me wrong.
Right. And by the way, it doesn't mean that they've got to buy in to Glenn H's spirituality plan or Mike R's spirituality plan.
I think the first part of it is you got to get outside your head. You're
right.
no longer
You're
God.
not God.
I'm no
I didn't
longer
create
God.
the universe.
Right.
And I really thought I did.
Well, for years
a while.
I did.
Yeah. Right.
So that's great. Okay.
So having had the spiritual awakening,
check.
We try to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
What does that mean? How do you help other alcoholics?
Well, wait a minute. It doesn't say to help them. It says we tried to help them. We try. That's all we do.
We try to carry the message.
We try to carry the message to other alcoholics. I mean, that's all we're trying to do. I can't. You and I, watch yourself. You're gonna get. Glenn's like drifting in the new studio, and he's scaring me.
It's so big,
he's
man.
Pressing buttons. He's pressing buttons.
I'm used to sitting in my little seat. Just now, I'm spread out, man. I don't know what to do.
I know. So yeah, it just says we try to carry this message because
so we don't have to succeed.
No, you and I both know how many times did somebody say what they thought was the right thing to Glenn.
That hard.
You're going to lose your kids. Or whatever. Give me a drink. Yeah. I mean, as hard as that is for me to say, I chose to drink over my kids. Now, I try and have my cake and eat it too. I drink while I was at the soccer game. I drink while I was at the bowling alley. I drink while we were singing Happy Birthday. I was trying to do both at the same time, and I felt I was doing it in pretty good fashion. But yes, people said to me, "Hey, you're drinking too much." People said that to me. People close to me said, "You're drinking too much." And that didn't do. They were trying to carry the message to me. They weren't. It wasn't getting in, but that wasn't their fault. And I feel the same way. All we could do is be here, be a podcast out in the universe for people who want a better way to live and are done with being in the rat race. We're trying.
Right. So what it doesn't say, it doesn't leave some Excel spreadsheet or checkbox where you got to put results. Right.
No.
And hey, that's something that we talk about with the podcast, right? Because it costs money, and it costs time, and it costs. I mean, just to prepare for a session, it takes hours, right? to prepare for a session, and right, and sometimes we look at each other and we're like, wow, we're not Joe Rogan. He's got 5 million listeners, right?
We have 5. That's good.
Yeah, we have 5. You know,
matters.
But guess what our goal was?
Right, 1. So we've super exceeded our expectations.
You know, and we just saw a review or a message or whatever it was this week.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I mean, there's 1, right?
Right.
So you know, we tried to carry this message. I think there's some key factors of that to another alcoholic. So what are some ways to carry the message, try to carry the message?
I got the best way.
What's that?
The best way is for me to continue to go to meetings, not for me, but for the next guy. Right? Because my experience, which is really all I have, right? I don't have education. I don't know how you got sober. I can't tell people how Glenn got sober, but I can tell people how I got sober.
Right.
And the more that I go to those meetings and give up that hour of my time, the more, and I only get a couple of minutes to talk in that meeting. I don't try and make an impact, but I try to leave a message.
So I still have character defects, and I'm going to deploy one of them right now.
Yeah, fire away.
And mock people.
Okay.
Right. It's especially on social media, right? Everybody's an expert. They're hiding behind their anonymous posts, and they're all experts, right? God, I love that.
Is your name really Glenn, by the way?
No.
Okay.
So I'm out there, and they say AA doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit there and I'm like, dude, I'm telling my story.
Right. And it worked for you.
I can tell you with 100% assurance what I am saying that I did worked.
Yeah, right.
So just because it didn't work for you,
right,
or you're the know-it-all in the room, or you're the ego telling, just because you have doesn't mean it didn't work for me.
Right.
I'm just telling you my story.
Right.
So I love it.
Yep, I love it. I love it too.
So we try meetings.
Meetings 1.
I think sharing your story and your experience, strength, and hope at meetings is certainly one. But I think you got to live it. That's kind of how I start is, I mean, if you go to meetings, because there's meetings I go to, I mean, I don't want nothing of what they have. I mean, they're judgmental, right? They talk about people, they gossip. I mean, I don't want that shit.
No.
So I think the first thing is you got to live it.
Well, and for you, I know this has happened in your life, in your business world. Somebody came back to you and said, "Hey, are you a 12-stepper? Because I'm listening to your language and seeing how you carry yourself, and you obviously know something about the 12 steps."
That blew my mind. Right. That was probably the biggest compliment I've ever got in my life.
But how about another compliment? I'm certain this has happened to you. At least I'm taking a flyer that it has. But has somebody in your circle, your social circle, your family circle, reached out to you and said, "Glenn, I've got a cousin, a brother, a coworker who needs to talk to somebody who's gotten sober"? Hasn't that happened to you in your life? It's happened to me.
So about 90% of the time, nobody calls.
Yeah, I know. But, but here's my thing.
But I'm available.
You know why? Because you're trying to carry the message to the next alcoholic. You're living it. That's my example of you living it.
Meetings, and then just being available.
Right, being available. Yep, absolutely.
And then be willing to share your story.
Right. I mean, if I am now the guy, I am the go-to guy in my social circle when somebody is having a drinking problem. Friend will call me, a relative will call me and say, "Mike, can you help this guy out?" Okay,
so podcasting is trying to carry the message, right? How about sponsoring?
Sponsoring, definitely.
How about just being a friend?
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're getting a good grocery list going on here. And what's the last part of the 12-step?
Last is, so having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry a message to other alcoholics. And the most important thing, to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yeah.
And I love that because, the principles, there's a principle to each step, right? And they're all
complicated for me. That's too deep.
No, they're all winners. They're all winners.
That's like a second tab on an Excel spreadsheet. So that last part, that third component of this 12-step, changed my life, changed how I lived, and here's why. Because if you do the 10th step at night, if you do page 86, right? When we're retiring at night, we reflect on our day. If you really looked at that, and then you looked at the third part of the 12th step where you practice the principles in all our affairs, if you're going to tell on yourself at night, and you're really going to live this program, and you fucked up during the day, and now you got to go back and connect with somebody and say, hey, babe, I didn't really, I meant what I said, but I shouldn't have said it that way. I should have said it differently. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry for being so brash. Or if you're really going to do that and be diligent with that, which I was and I am, during the day, I started thinking, hey, I mean, before I fire off the Scud missile comment, right, which I'm really good at because it's brilliant, I sit there and say, look, stop. Glenn, if you're going to apologize for it, why say it? Right? And so I started practicing those, and I started to change the way I lived, and now rarely do I need to do the page 86 at night. I mean, I do the page 86, but rarely do I need to make amends for something I did that day.
Because during the day, you're living off of principles of honesty, hope, surrender, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, love, responsibility, discipline, awareness,
You're reading
and
all
service.
that, right? You got to be the way you rolled that
I
off.
fired that off.
Brilliant.
But those are the principles that
Can
we
you
live.
read them again?
Absolutely. Honesty. I mean, it starts with step one and being honest. Hope. Surrender. Okay? We surrender. Not only did we surrender that first time, I'm speaking for you now, but we surrender all the time to advice other people give us.
I think that's great.
Yes. And then courage. I mean, we have to live with the courage to try and change the things that were so embedded in us.
Courage is the same thing as balls.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. It doesn't say it on the wall, but yeah, you need to have balls. And integrity. Willingness. Right, you got to be willing to try some other things. I had to try pickleball.
Man.
You know,
did you really try pickleball?
No, I didn't. Humility.
Hey, it's an honesty. Go back to that.
Back to honesty. I didn't. Not at all. No, not at all. Humility and love. I mean, love is key. Responsible. Boy, I practice that principle now. I'm responsible. I get my car sticker when it's supposed to get got. I get my insurance. I have a job. I show up for my employer.
It's amazing to me. You know, this week I got my license renewal in the mail.
Yeah.
I did it within the hour.
Isn't that something? What? Tell me about Old Glen.
Well, I just laugh. You know, I can remember the time, you know, I called my sponsor, Timmy, and now, and since we've had him on, you know, I can use his name, but, you know, I call him, I'm like, dude, guess what I did? He goes, what'd you do? I said, I got my car registered on time for the first time in 12 or 14 years.
Kudos to you.
And he goes, that's what you're supposed to do.
That's his standard
I'm like,
answer.
oh, man.
You're right. And then the last two are awareness, you know, and I love when you talk about you're super aware, hyper aware of what's going on. We must be. And then the last one is service, which, as you can see, culminates
back
service?
To the... Give me 5 examples of service, rapid fire.
You already wrote them down, you know.
Live at meetings, available, willing to share, podcast, sponsor, friend.
And that's the thing about the 12. That's the thing about the 12. Have you ever cooked at the picnic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Serve coffee.
Here's the thing, it's the song that never ends, right? Because getting to the 12th step brings you back to the first step, brings you back to living these principles in all our affairs.
Right. Yep.
So we use the 12 steps as a filter ongoing in our life to live those principles out. So it's not the end; it's really the beginning of a beautiful life.
So I was working with a guy yesterday, and you know, I've known him for 10 years or whatever, and he's still, you know, he's talking about challenges in his life, right? And I'm, you know, very similar challenges to 5 years ago when we had the same conversations, right? I finally looked at him. I said, "Can I just give you some pretty frank input?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, as I'm sitting here listening, I said, I just think, and he hasn't completed the 12 steps. He goes to AA all the time, but hasn't done 12 steps. I said, your life, in my opinion, my experience, if you actually worked the 12 steps and you actually got through the 12th step and started, you know, impacting others, you know, and working with others and getting a sponsee, I said, I think your life would absolutely change.
And?
For the great.
And his response. Because you tried to carry the message.
Right. And he says, okay.
Okay.
You know? But you're dying in the desert. You're complaining for 5 years about thirst.
Right.
The water is right in front of you.
Right.
All you have to do is drink. Mm-hmm. And you're still complaining about thirst.
Right.
And you're not drinking.
Yeah. Rattles the brain, doesn't it?
And you have people rolling up to the fountain of water and just drinking all day long.
I'm guzzling.
Mikey's guzzling.
I'm guzzling.
And he's sitting back
I've been guzzling my whole
complaining
life,
that he's
by
thirsty.
the way. Yeah.
It just blows my mind.
I know.
So, I don't know, man. You can try to carry the message.
You try to carry the message.
Right?
That's it. And practice these principles on our pairs.
See, man.
Hey, someone wants our table. We got to go.
Brother, hey, so how was your talk the other? Good?
Good, yeah.
12-step?
You know what? Here's what I know. People come up and said, thank you, you said something. That's the thing about meeting. When somebody opens their mouth, there's something out there for the universe to pick up and
for
take
everybody.
hold of. Yes.
There's one nugget.
That's right.
There's 5 nuggets.
And that's
half
all that
a
matters.
nugget for anybody.
Yeah. Love
all
you,
right, man.
brother.
Hey, I love you too, brother. Nice job on the 12-step.
Talk to you.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.